Prior to watching the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman, which was, believe it or not, my first cinematic endeavor with the character itself, I wasn't particularly interested in the character Superman as a whole. Because back in the day, when I was a kid, I was a huge fan of the Justice League animated series. And that show was kind of my reference point for Superman growing up. And that kind of reference point or the show didn't necessarily convince me either that he was an interesting character in a sense, or that I wanted to see more of Superman, as within the context of the show, the character of Batman appealed to me much more because I felt like I could relate to the character in a more meaningful and human way. And while I was growing up, of course, I mostly grew up with Star Wars and Indiana Jones movies, and I did not get exposed to the Christopher Reeve version of Superman, as superheroes weren't really a big thing in Europe in the early 2000s. That is, of course, until Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy came out, and specifically Batman Begins came along, and that movie, of course, reinvented how these larger-than-life and comic book characters are approached on film. But I feel like that the Dark Knight made the biggest impact on culture at the time, as it cemented Batman and the idea of superheroes in the collective consciousness in a way that we didn't necessarily see before. It's like the Dark Knight just conquered the world and showed the world how these characters can actually be portrayed in an interesting way where it's not campy, but it appeals to a larger audience, if you will. But the Superman movies didn't really make that much fuss, in my honest opinion, or I didn't necessarily was interested in them as much as I was in The Dark Knight, and people weren't necessarily talking about those movies back in the day as they were talking about The Dark Knight. And I felt like that those movies didn't necessarily have the same appeal when we are just talking about pop culture or just collective consciousness in general. That is until early 2017, where I finally watched the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman for the first time, and it started to change my perspective, especially on the character Superman himself. As while I was watching the movie, Superman's character resonated with me, as not just his character, but his struggles and his reactions felt real to me, even though he was a godlike being, so I didn't necessarily understand why I gravitated towards the character, because by the very definition of the character of Superman, he is somebody that you cannot necessarily connect to, but I did anyway. But before that, as I mentioned before, even as a kid, I thought that Superman's character was just too goofy and too childish, even for me as a child. And I felt like that the character was just this kind of personification of wishful thinking. But after having watched Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition 3 times, and me connecting with Henry Cavill's character and Zack Snyder's vision, I finally set out to watch Man of Steel for the first time. Now, after I watched Man of Steel, I felt like I started to gain a deeper understanding of what the character actually is or can be portrayed in the right hands, which to me was a living, breathing god who is at the same time as human as everybody else. When I think about this interpretation of the character or just comic book characters in general, I felt like that what allowed this interpretation to exist was large part due to the more grounded and the realistic take of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy resonating with audiences worldwide, and Zack Snyder's visionary approach and execution to show the character for what he truly is. But of course, everything has to start somewhere, and I feel like that this all started with casting the perfect person for the role, that being Henry Cavill. Now, Zack Snyder's way of casting is a very interesting one, as he approaches the casting of these iconic characters in a very peculiar way, that being that he wants the person or the actor to personify the character's alter ego first, in this case Clark Kent, of course, in order to ground the character in reality. Therefore, the audience can accept the actor as the character Superman in this case, for example, as he personifies who and what Clark Kent is in real life. And just a few questions regarding these casting choices or actors cast for the role. Could Henry Cavill be Superman in real life? I think anybody who has seen Henry Cavill wearing the cape and the Superman suit or the costume would say yes, without a doubt. He could absolutely be Superman in real life. People would even say that he is Superman in real life. Or just another question. Could you imagine Ben Affleck being Batman in real life? And my honest question to that is, who couldn't? Ben Affleck is basically Batman in real life. It wouldn't really be a stretch to imagine that, yeah, he would take up the cape and cowl and he could be Batman because he has all the tools in his arsenal for it. And I feel like that Henry Cavill perfectly embodies the soul of Superman. Be it at the journey's lowest moments, like in Batman v Superman, or in the brighter ones, like at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League. But when it comes to the direction and the interpretation of this character, the direction for the character wasn't obvious until it was, with a visionary director at the helm, accompanied by the pure embodiment of Superman. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you did so, please leave a like and let me know all of your thoughts regarding Henry Cavill Superman, Zack Snyder Superman, and why did the character resonate with you. Subscribe for more content like this one, and I will see you in the next one. And until then, remember to keep it insightful.